Ebere, what is the fastest growing supermarket chain in the United States?
I'm glad you asked, James. So there's a top three, right? We got Grocery Outlet. They came up with 900,000 square feet last year. Publix added 1.3 million square feet last year. But the champ for the third year in a row was Aldi, and they opened over 2 million square feet of grocery stores last year.
I think that's interesting. Grocery outlet, granted, has been expanding, but adding to that champion of value oriented grocers that are, active across the country.
Absolutely, Taylor. In a recent survey, consumers said that the foremost concern for them when it came to grocery shopping was cost. So it makes perfect sense that we would see a lot of these discount value oriented chains expanding over the past year.
And also, like those value-oriented chains, they're also both small footprint, right? Like Grocery Outlet and Aldi, they're significantly smaller than, Publix or Kroger, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like we've been seeing store formats downsize across the industry for the past few years, but specifically Aldi and Grocery Outlet both average around 25,000 square feet for their stores, whereas the traditional grocery store might be, upwards of 80,000 square feet. So the small formats are definitely expanding aggressively too.
Guys, this is fascinating. I think we should dig into the American grocery scene today. What do you think?
I'm here for it.
Awesome. So this week we're talking about how grocers have been expanding their physical footprints as well as their digital footprints. We're going to dig into all of that right now on everything we know about retail. So my name's James Cook. I'm coming to you from Indiana, where my go-to grocery shop is at Kroger, though I have been known to venture to Aldi from time to time. And Ebere Anokute is in New York.
I am, and I usually buy my groceries at either Giant or Whole Foods if I'm feeling fancy.
Nice. Taylor Coyne is in Los Angeles.
Hello. I usually shop at Sprouts, adding to that small format grocery store cohort. It's the best.
Love it.
And this is Everything We Know About Retail, where we tell all of you everything we know about retail, and we do it just 3 things at a time. Actually, that's what we usually do. Today, we're going to mix it up a bit. So Ebere recently wrote a report, Grocers Grow Digital and Physical Footprints in 2021. So we're going to talk about it. So it's, Taylor, you're ready. It's kind of just a grill Ebere day.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's easy for us, right? We just sit back and chill out. Okay. So let's start it off. Ebere, you ready to go?
Let's go. Let's do it.
Okay. And I should say, if folks want to check out this report, download it on jll.com. Just go to the research section. It's near the top of the list. So we talked about Publix, Grocery Outlet, and Aldi being the top 3 expanders last year. What did we miss?
So I think the other grocers that are worth mentioning are Food Lion, right? They're a subsidiary of Ahold Delhaize, which is like a large grocery conglomerate, I guess. That was actually one of the most interesting things about the report, was learning just how monopolized the grocery industry is, and how there's, these big grocery companies, and all the brands and banners that I'm familiar with fall under those larger ones, right? So Food Line, like I said, subsidiary of Ahold Delhaize, and they actually opened 71 new stores throughout the country, or throughout the Southeast this past year. However, we didn't really count that in our overall analysis, because the bulk of that were acquisitions from underperforming stores from Southeastern Grocers, right? So they have a couple of banners themselves, Harvey's, Buy Low, and they closed a bunch of those stores that weren't performing too well, and Food Line scooped them right up. So they're another name, or another grocer that expanded considerably last year as well.
Yeah, it's funny, like how grocery is so local in the sense that you go to a different city and it's like it has all these, it's like oh shoot, like if you go to Denver, it's oh my gosh, what's the Kroger owned chain in Denver? I'm totally blanking. It's so funny. I'm totally blanking, and my sister's going to be mad at me because that's where she shops. Anyway, but you go to a chain like in Phoenix, Fry's, and
Right.
you're like, oh, this is a totally different chain I've never heard of, and you walk in and you're like, oh, this is Kroger.
Yep.
Like imagine if a restaurant conglomerate started acquiring like local mom and pop restaurants and didn't change the name, just like change the, you know, the stuff behind the scenes. It's just interesting how it works.
Yeah, I'm sure that happens. Honestly, even with the restaurant industry, we just maybe they're a little bit quieter about it than the grocers are. But yeah, definitely interesting to see, you know, how regional these things are, right? How, you know, you were talking, Taylor, you said you enjoy Sprouts. Never heard of Sprouts until I started doing this report. So just crazy how different parts of the country rely so heavily on different banners from these grocers.
So where is there a regional distinction for where expansion is occurring? Is it all happening in certain areas?
No, it's not. So that's, I mean, that's a great question because it goes back to that sort of like hyper regional focus. So like I mentioned for Food Lion, they focused in the Southeast, so Georgia and the Carolinas, and that's because that's where the Harvey and Bilo stores that they acquired were. But for other, you know, brands, it's been different. Aldi is also expanding in the Southeast. Publix is a Florida mainstay, right? So any Florida watchers, you know, I know how you guys get about your Publix. I know how serious that is to the Florida culture.
They're
So they've been
really great.
expanding.
A Publix is great. They're
Yeah.
great. I
Yeah.
gotta say.
I've only been once, but I was definitely impressed. And I rarely feel like I'm impressed by grocery stores, but Publix lived up to the hype for sure. And then, you know, Grocery Outlet, which we mentioned, is expanding on the West Coast, right? Lidl's on the East Coast, Food Line, like I said, Georgia and the Carolinas. So all over the country, kind of. But I did want to mention Aldi again, just because on the topic of expansion, it can't be understated how aggressively they're expanding, right? So they announced that they're going to open 100 stores last year, and they made good on that for about 88 stores from what I was able to find. So, you know, pretty good. That's what, 88% out of 100. That's, you know, almost an A. That's really well done on their part. But they've announced that they want to open even more stores in 2022. So they want to open 150 stores this year. And given the stores they opened last year, their total store count now is 2,158 stores across the country, which makes them the third largest grocer in the U.S. behind your favorite Kroger, James, and Walmart. I should ask you guys to guess to see if you guys could have guessed who the first two were, but I know you would have known. So it would have been whatever. But yeah, very aggressive expansion on their part. And I don't know, for me, I feel like I hadn't even really heard of Aldi until 2-3 years ago or so. Clearly they must have been here because you don't get that many stores in 3 years. But I feel like that's really, really, you know, they've grown their presence considerably since entering the market, you know, pretty recently.
You know, and speaking of Aldi, what's going on with Lidl? I feel like, you know, Lidl was another, you know, we talk about Aldi and Lidl together. Lidl, you know, at least a few years ago now, you know, expanded, tried a little too quickly, I think was the consensus. But have they still been, you know, opening up new stores?
They definitely have. Yeah. So we mentioned those smaller format grocers, and they've been super aggressive. I feel like with a lot of the available space on the market in various cities, I feel like there's a lot of big boxes that are perfectly right size for some of these smaller grocery tenants. So Lidl, like you mentioned, Taylor, they're around 15,000 square feet on average, and they opened 52 new stores last year, all along the East Coast. They actually opened one in Harlem, not too far from, you know, where I used to live. So that's been interesting to see, just, you know, going into the store and just seeing how it's different from the other, you know, what's in New York, we have like, yeah, Whole Foods and stuff, but like Key Food, I feel like it's like one of the popular chains that we see, especially uptown. So Lidl is definitely, you know, a new entrant to that market that I've seen the lines going out of the door, honestly, just to get inside. So definitely very, very popular. And on that same topic of the smaller ones, you know, Taylor, your favorite, Sprouts, they average around 25,000 square feet, and they've opened 20 new stores in the last year as well. So those smaller format grocers are definitely in expansion mode, and I think that's only going to continue going forward because, again, there's so much right size boxes of available space on the market for them to quickly eat up.
I've never been into a Lidl. They aren't over here on the West Coast, but I will be interested to go. And my first opportunity, I will go to Lidl and I will have a good time.
Yeah. I was impressed by their prepared food section. They had a lot of chicken and salads and wraps and things like that, which again, I feel like that's the big draw with like Publix. I feel like people who I know talk about Publix, they talk about the prepared foods, right? It's like the Publix chicken, it's all the things you can get there. So Lidl's definitely, doing their best to do more with less. That rhymes, not on purpose.
Yeah, it's funny. Talked about Aldi not being on the radar. They've been in the US since I want to say the late 70s, but
Wow.
in certain like Midwestern markets and kind of below the radar for like kind of the coastal cities until pretty recently. Taylor, what year was it that Aldi opened all the Southern California stores? Was that like 2017, 2018?
Yeah, at some point. It was late teens.
Okay. Around then.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago.
But they had started earlier than that. But I mean, I do feel like the big push of all the opening, like, let's just call it 100 stores a year, does feel like that started happening in like 2018, maybe 2017. Sure. So maybe that's when they started popping up in SoCal, even though I know there have been a few locations in some markets. But again, it was only more recently for me too, driving around being like, Aldi. Like it would be a little bit more like, oh, if you were, for example, driving out to Palm Springs and going through like the Inland Empire, I feel like you'd spot more Aldis. But now you can drive around and just be like, again, Aldi. There's one around the corner from me. So they're definitely popping up all over the place.
You can dig. We could do a whole Aldi episode, guys. When you dig into, when you scratch the surface, there's so much interesting stuff to talk about because there's a global chain. Okay. Do we have time for a quick fun fact about Aldi?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Always have time for fun facts.
Aldi was founded in, why do I know this? Essen, Germany. And they're a chain all across Germany, but Aldi's actually two companies. There's Aldi Nord and Aldi Süd. So Aldi North and Aldi South, and they have the country split in two. So they actually have two different logos. They're both called Aldi, but they have different logos. And their own, they were founded, like the original Aldi was founded by a father, and then the brothers split off into the Aldi North and Aldi South. So anyway, depending on what your country, because they've got Aldis all over the world now, depending on what country you're in, your Aldi might be run by Aldi North or Aldi South. I forget which one we are in the U.S., but here's the interesting thing. The U.S. is the only country in the world where both companies operate outside of Germany, because one of them runs all of the Aldis and the other one runs all of the Trader Joe's.
Fascinating.
Yes. I know, right?
What I didn't know that. Okay, I want to know this of your fun facts. Is there a preference for the North or South one in European countries? Do you know, is like the experience the same? Are they different?
Here's what I know. I've been to an Aldi in, where was that? I want to say Berlin, but it might have been Munich. So I've been to one Aldi in its homeland, and it was very similar to the Aldis here, like very similar. And it was a number of years ago, but I think they're the same. I think they source a lot of the same products. It's the cut rate, stuff's on a pallet. It's not poor quality, but it's all very inexpensive. Only like one or two people running the whole store. That seems to be an Aldi thing as well.
Well, clearly they have something that works. They figured it out, and they're like, we're not messing with this. We know what we're doing.
Yeah. Aldi is also the biggest seller of wine in Germany. There you go. That's all the Aldi jazz I had floating around in my head.
Nothing else.
Yeah, I'm impressed though, nonetheless. So that was great. Thank you, James.
More than I knew, for sure.
Pivoting a little bit, thinking about what I just said about, we do this thing really well and we're not going to change it. Nothing like e-commerce to change things. And, Aldi does not well, that's actually not true. They're kind of changing doing pickup. But anyway, Ebere, part of your, thesis, let's call it, for this report was that they're expanding physical and digital. So like, what's going on with e-commerce as we kind of, I can't say ending the pandemic, but getting into this like new part where we're feeling good about going back out again.
Right. This perpetually gray area that we seem to live in these days.
Yes.
I mean, before I answer that, I want to ask you guys, how have your grocery shopping habits changed since the start of the pandemic? Did you guys run to e-commerce, or are you still fans of going to the physical store?
I'm both. I'm a both.
Okay. Were you always a both, or did that come around after the pandemic?
I've always been a both. However, I will say pandemic has accelerated my use of online, but I will also say the pandemic was also coincided with having a child, of which now going to the grocery store is more difficult. So it's a little bit of both, I would say. Pandemic, convenience, willing to pay for that convenience to not have to, drag a baby to the grocery store or figure out who's watching the baby while you go and do that. So mine's a little bit of a more nuanced answer.
Fair. What about you, James?
Yeah, I mean, I've done click and collect a little bit. Target, Kroger. It's just it just doesn't, like, not only is it a lot of plastic bags, which I'm not super into, although Taylor was telling me you can ask them to take everything out of the plastic bags, and my response is I'm not going to be that guy.
Right.
But I will also say I only know that
take it out. Take it out.
Yeah, I only know that for Target. I don't think that that's for like grocery stores, which, yeah, I don't know. That is another thing that's a layer of guilt. But yeah, well, to your point, order like 500 things of Target. Now, please just put everything in the trunk. Thank you.
Right.
Just anyway, you go to the grocery store. I buy a lot of stuff. I do all my grocery shopping in one run for the week. And a lot of times they're out of specific things. And I've really got to do some Sherlock Holmes work, looking up the recipe, thinking about what I might substitute, and going out and getting other stuff. So for those reasons, I just tend to just pick it up on my own, not because I'm against it or anything, but just it works better for me.
Right.
One quick plug for e-commerce and how it has improved. I will say the pickers who have done my Instacart order are great. Like, that's one cool. Day they were out of something that I wanted. I got like 5 different pictures of the aisle of all of the different products. And he was like, which one do you want instead? And I was like, that is great. It's because like I can point to the picture rather than like, I'm not sure what's there. So, but it does take thought and, still effort to look through all those pictures. But anyway.
No, it makes sense.
Clearly I'm a pro.
No, clearly that's what it sounds like, which is good to have all the perspectives. It makes sense that they would, make some refinements to the process, because I've definitely heard that as a complaint before, that the people who pick, they're not going to eat the mango that they give you. So they might pick whichever one is right there. They don't know how you like your mangoes, right? Whether you want them to be totally super ripe or not ripe at all. So I've heard that as well. I think I default to just going to the store just because ordering online, just, I don't know, it hasn't clicked for me personally. I would rather just go there, see what I want and grab it, as opposed to, I feel like there's a lot of thought that has to go into, like, shopping online is already a sort of a headache, whether it's like clothes or other stuff like that, because you have to filter through all the things and sort by what you want and stuff. And so I don't want that headache at the grocery store, but I am alone in that, right? James and I are alone in that, clearly, because throughout the past 2 years, e-commerce grocery has exploded, right? So in 2020, those sales for e-commerce grocery grew by more than 60% over the previous year, right? And then they grew another 12% on top of that in 2021, coming in at $122 billion last year. That's how much money was spent on e-commerce grocery. So clearly that says to me that a lot of people are doing it, and that it's a permanent shift in the way that we shop, right? Which is why I kind of asked whether that had sort of changed over the course of the pandemic or not, because a lot of people are definitely shifting the way that they shop for groceries to, either primarily online or definitely including online. Taylor, I remember you said something maybe a couple weeks ago about the breakdown between generations and how they gravitated towards online grocery, and how that was especially impressive because it was like the older generations, right, that were super into it. You want to say something about that?
Well, just fear. I mean, oh my goodness, all of us had fear. We all did these online things, but apparently, these older generations were definitely like, I'm not ordering my groceries online. Pandemic comes, they become the most at-risk group, and they're like, great, online grocery shopping it is for the next year and a half.
Right.
And I think like me too, who maybe did it every once in a while, once you do it more than once and you've kind of figured out the best way to do it and get the outcome that you want, you ended up getting loyal customers of these services. So I think that that's super interesting. And, again, I think this applies to all the generations, but you've gotten more use out of that older generation. They're still going to the store. But I think, again, it's like, oh, maybe there's a surge. Great. I know at least I can get what I need, how I need it by doing it online, and I don't have to risk my health and go to the store. So options for all generations, but I think it's interesting that they're, the older generations are, hanging out on Instacart and all of the other online ordering groceries.
Can you imagine? Yeah, I would have guessed that was a purely millennial Gen Z trend. So to see the older generations, it makes perfect sense why they did, but that especially speaks to the stickiness of this trend and why we're going to see it, continue for years to come. And another aspect of this whole thing that I think is definitely going to bolster the grocery industry and also the online grocery industry is the sort of dynamic that's always existed between dining out versus eating at home. I know that in our research, we definitely sort of use one as a proxy to understand the other sort of, to see, if more people are dining out, then they're eating less at home, if they're eating more at home, et cetera, et cetera. And so obviously when people couldn't really go out, we saw more people eating at home than dining out because the restaurants were closed or they weren't allowing people to dine at the on site, only takeout, et cetera. And one thing that I think is going to continue to bolster this grocery boom is the fact that unfortunately throughout the pandemic we lost a lot of restaurants across the country. So the National Restaurant Association in their State of the Industry report for last year, they estimated that at least 110,000 food and drinking places across the country had gone out of business either temporarily or permanently.
Wow.
Right, so a little bit of a difficult to say exactly how many permanent closures there were, but because of that, unfortunately, as much as we love restaurants, grocers aren't going to necessarily have to cede that much of their market share back to the restaurants because there are simply fewer restaurants for people to go to. So definitely, not good news. We're not celebrating that because we all love to go out to eat. It's a beautiful experience, but it definitely is good news for the grocery industry at least.
And I feel like most of those vacant restaurants have been backfilled at this point too. Mm-hmm. In fact, a lot of those operators that closed have since then found new backers and opened up new concepts. So it seems like it could be potentially a lot of creative, a source of creative destruction in the restaurant world, which actually makes there's some more appealing restaurants to go eat to. So maybe we're not going to go to the grocery store as much this week, but we'll see. It's not a zero-sum game. I mean, I think just growth in food spending overall can increase.
Yeah, we're definitely trying to eat no matter what. So whether it's at the restaurant or at home, it's there's still gains to be had on both sides for sure.
Yeah. So what we talked about e-commerce. So we really talked about technology. I mean, I'm always hearing about what's new in technology in the supermarket. Ebere, what did you touch on in that aspect in the report?
Right. So one of the things that we highlighted in the report was the advent of cashierless technology and walkout stores, right? So I know we've all heard about or experienced, right, gone to the Amazon Go store. They're kind of the ones that have piloted this sort of technology as far as you walk in, you scan your app, your Amazon app when you walk in, and then once you're there, there's no cashier. You just kind of grab whatever it is that you want, and then the sensors or the machines or the overlords, who knows, are watching and they record exactly what you take, and then your account is charged once you exit. So there's no need to deal with a cashier or wait in line. Really, you just kind of grab what you need and get out of there. So Amazon piloted that technology when they opened those stores a few years ago, and they announced recently that they're going to be introducing that same technology into their grocery divisions, right? So obviously we know that they own Whole Foods, so they're planning to open I believe the first cashierless Whole Foods are opening this year in Sherman Oaks, California, and I believe Long Island was the other place, right? So those two locations are going to be opening those walkout technology Whole Food stores, which is going to be really interesting. And they also have another banner of grocery stores that's supposed to be like a more accessible price point than Whole Foods. They're Amazon Fresh stores, which they are, signing a lot of deals on. They're very, aggressive about expanding with that as well, and they're going to have the technology there too. So definitely going to be cool. I wonder if we're going to see some of the other U.S. grocery companies start to adopt that technology as well to try to stay competitive, because it's definitely, I think, the fact that it works and that it's so easy is definitely a reason for it to stick around for a while. And I don't see, Amazon doesn't seem to be going to reverting when it comes to their, with that technology in their Go stores. So I definitely think we're going to see a lot of more U.S. companies and grocery companies use similar technology if they're able to build it, of course.
It was funny. My sister was shopping at at one of them the other week, and she texted me. She's like, "Did you know that you can do this?" Like, she had no idea. She just thought she was walking into the store, and she was like totally taken aback by the fact that she didn't have to check out or do anything. And I was like, "Yes, I talk about it all the time. It's really funny. What did you think?" And she was like, she didn't do a big shop. She just like ran in for a couple of different things. But her biggest takeaway, which I agree. So here in California, you can buy beer, wine, liquor in the grocery store.
Right.
Coming from New Jersey, that was a novel concept to me. But, and when you go to the grocery store, if you just want to go get any alcoholic beverage and do a self-checkout, you can't. You cannot buy anything. You can at the Just Walk Out. I guess they have scanned your ID somehow and verified who you are. And she said she did not need to show anyone, or maybe she had to show her ID on the way out, but it was not like, it did not change her shopping experience because she was buying alcohol, which I will say often when you're running into the grocery store for some small item, I do not want to stand on the line that's 10 people deep to just, buy a 6-pack or whatever it is.
Right.
So that's like a pretty big thing in my mind.
That's epic.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. I knew that there's been some experimentation around that. I think I was reading about like Tesco has in London has a Just Walk Out store, and I think they were experimenting with some virtual carding, so they didn't have to have a person. But I know in a lot of these, like the Amazon Go in Chicago that I went to, there's a separate area for the alcohol, and you had to show your ID. Right. I think it's the state laws that you have to follow are going to vary.
Right. Who knows? But I just thought that was super interesting. But, I don't know if either, if you ever, again, back to Instacart, if I get alcohol, the Instacart delivery person has to scan my ID every time. It's not like my ID is now in the system, which I think is also kind of odd that it's not just like, once I buy it, aren't we good?
Mm-hmm.
But no, they come in and scan my barcode every single time.
Yeah. Although I will say one time I ordered Drizzly, and the guy, I opened the door and he was like, "You look old enough." Just gave it to me. Don't tell Drizzly. I don't want to get him in trouble, whoever that guy is. But yeah, they usually are pretty strict about it, which is why it's so amazing that, they're able to do that at Amazon. And James, you brought up Tesco over in the UK, because that is another thing that we highlighted in the report, the fact that this technology and the influence of it has spread across the world, right? So we've seen these sort of Just Walk Out stores debuting with grocers in the United Kingdom as well. Tesco was one of them. They kind of debuted after they saw Lidl do it, right? Lidl did it first with their Lidl Go concept, then Tesco, and then Aldi opened their first cashierless store in Greenwich in London this past year. So yeah, in my opinion, if it can spread across the world like that, we're definitely going to start to see that technology pop up a lot more at grocery stores, stateside, which is really exciting. And I think it just highlights overall the growing emphasis on convenience, right? It's always all about meeting the customer wherever they are, making the interaction as seamless as possible for them, because, that's how the world works now, right? The more barriers there are to me spending my money, the less money I'm going to spend. It needs to be easy and quick. And, these grocers have definitely adapted to that and are implementing that in their business strategies. So very exciting times. There's a lot of money being made in grocery, and I think we're going to see even more technology and more trends emerge in the coming years.
Awesome. So just a reminder, new grocery report available for download at jll.com. Just go to research. If you're watching along in the chat, type in your favorite grocery chain Haven't even talked about Wegmans. Do we have any Wegmans fans out there?
I was going to mention that when we talked about Publix, of like people getting real excited about their grocery stores.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the chicken that you brought up, I was like, Wegmans.
Do they have those? I mean, this might be a silly question, but I think of that as like an upstate New York thing. Are they elsewhere in the country, or is it mostly like the Northeast, right? Yeah.
I think it's actually just New York. Like the one in Brooklyn was their first downstate Wegmans, wasn't it? Besides like New York, Pennsylvania?
There's several in Pennsylvania that I know about.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still Northeast.
Northeast for sure.
Maybe they've gone as far south as like Maryland or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, they're opening at I think Astor Place. They signed
Yep.
lease there, so in the city, right? That's Manhattan, so it's like an 80,000 square foot lease. So definitely gonna be a huge store. But I always heard about it from my friends that went to school upstate, and I was always like Wegmans, like I don't even know what that. They don't have that where we're from. So
yeah, I don't think there are any in New Jersey. I think it's just like, I don't know, an interesting geography. I just know they're in Pennsylvania, but maybe they're in New Jersey, just not near where I grew up. Anyway, more Wegmans to come, though, for sure. And again, talk about people who love the grocery stores. It's the Wegmans shopper.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, folks, you ready for a little bit of a retail challenge?
Maybe.
Yeah, always. I'm on a roll.
All right. Okay. So, yeah, Taylor? You're defending your crown.
Oh, for like a few weeks running.
All right.
You played against yourself last week, so that.
To be fair, a couple of these were against myself, but that's.
All right. So, it is time for the retail challenge. The way it works is Ebere is playing against Taylor. They're going to get a point for each correct question. If you are watching along live, write in your own answer to the question in the chat. The first person to get the correct answer in the chat is going to win the virtual esteem of the entire LinkedIn Live universe. Monetary value, I don't know, but just as, it's just unparalleled in terms of just clout, just getting...
I can attest all of these things. That's great.
Yeah. So, anywho, I'm the quiz master. Ebere and Taylor are the players, and let's get into it. Okay. First question: inflation. U.S. inflation in March was 8.5% overall. That's March year over year. Of these three items, which item clocked in at the biggest inflation? Was it airline tickets, men's suits, or bacon? Which item inflated the most?
So interesting.
Taylor, I'll start with you.
I'm going to go with A, airline tickets, gas prices, even though bacon seems like something I really want to pick, but I'm going to go with A, airline tickets.
All right, Ebere, what do you think?
I might have said airline as well. I'm trying to think supply chain, like which supply chain is more difficult, the bacon supply chain or the suit supply chain?
I also don't know, depends on the suits, right? Like, I don't know where all of that fabric comes from either. Like, for all I know, it's like, I feel like I've been learning a lot about how things are made, oh, you need this thing, but it comes from the soybean extract that can only be from, Brazil. And it's just like, okay.
I'm going to say bacon. I haven't seen too many pigs around the past 2 years. So.
All right. Of these three items, the item with the biggest inflation was airline tickets.
I had a feeling.
So, Taylor, you get a point.
Point of clarification. Can we pick the same answer?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Airline tickets was 24%. Suits 15%. Bacon was 18%. So not bad. Gasoline was 48%. I didn't put that in there because that would have been the obvious pick.
Right.
And
I got a couple flights to book. I better book those.
Yeah, most economists expect inflation to continue throughout the year. FYI, wow. Not a great thing, but on the other hand, it is a sign of the fact that incomes are rising and there's more of a demand for consumer goods. So in that sense, it's not a bad thing.
Silver lining, James. I like that.
Thank you.
Always looking for it. All right. So today's show is about supermarkets. So let's talk about supermarkets. The first modern self-service grocery store opened in 1916 in Memphis, Tennessee, of all places. What was it? Was it a Piggly Wiggly, a Stop and Shop, or a Ralph's? Ebere, you can go first this time.
Memphis, Tennessee. What do they have out there? I mean, I don't think it's Stop and Shop because I am familiar with them. So I'm gonna say Piggly Frickin' Wiggly. Why not?
That's actually what they're called, Piggly Frickin' Wiggly. Taylor, what do you think?
I'm going Stop and Shop.
You're gonna go Stop and Shop?
That feels like I don't know the history of a Stop and Shop, but like what Ebere said, I used like Stop and Shops were around. I feel like that could be like one of the like original grocery stores.
Fair enough.
Stop and Shop.
The correct answer is Piggly Wiggly.
I believe it's pronounced Piggly Freaking Wiggly.
So this was 1916. It was the first supermarket or first grocer to provide checkout stands, where you pull up the cart. It was the first to mark the price on every item in the store.
Wow.
So think about that. Before, you'd have to
Barter?
Things weren't even individually packaged. Like before Piggly Wiggly, things were like, you wanted flour, so they would scoop it out and put it into another container for you. So it was a real modernization. So
Which,
wait,
isn't that funny? Now you can do that again, like at Sprouts.
Oh, right,
like
everything
I
else
go
is
in.
new again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So wait, who had Piggly Wiggly?
Ebere.
Ebere did. So
Shout
Ebere's
out
got
to
a point.
Memphis.
Question,
got a point.
throwing it out there. Do you know any history of Piggly Wiggly and why it is called Piggly Wiggly?
Never seen one. I don't know anything.
The stuff I know about Piggly Wiggly is a little weird. The founder of Piggly Wiggly went on to create. The shorter answer is I don't know what the name came from, but the founder went on to create this insane chain called Key Doozle, which I can't even begin to explain. It was like an attempt, and this is like 50s, the 50s, maybe the early 60s. It was an attempt to do a self checkout. So you would go around, and when you bought things, there was a key that you would put into things and turn. I don't remember all the logistics, but when you checked out, you wouldn't. You're like collecting things, and you'd hand this. I guess it would be key to them, and all the stuff would come to you on a conveyor belt. I'm not doing a good job of explaining it. Just Google on you or search on YouTube for Key Doozle, and it was way impractical, but an attempt to be ahead of its time. But we got to find out what Piggly Wiggly is all about.
Yeah.
Okay, so wait. So Ebere's got a point. Taylor's got a point.
Yep.
And now we're going into number 3, and this is actually a 3-parter. This is a speed round. As you all know, there are many small regional and local chains that we don't track in our research. And I think a lot of them, if you don't live in the area, you might never even heard of them. I'm going to give you the name of 3 chains. One of them is made up. The first person, this is just the first person to shout the made up name, get that correctly, wins the point. So you guys ready?
Yes.
Okay, so here's our first one. Which one of these is made up? Is it Brookshire Brothers, Tops, or Super Duper Mart?
Brookshire.
Yeah, I was going to say that one too. But if it's not, Super Duper Mart.
Yes. Super Duper Mart is made up. Tops is in New York, Vermont, and Pennsylvania. And
Tops is the... Yeah, so, sorry, James, go ahead.
And then Brookshire Brothers is in Texas and Louisiana.
Tops was the only one I was like, I know that's real.
Never heard of any of them.
And honestly, Super Duper Mart easily could be one.
Very
much as possible.
Yeah, I feel like I've been to a Super Duper Mart at one point in my life.
Yeah. All right, here's another one. Which one is the fake market? Is it Hornbacher's, Harp's Food Stores, or Farmer's Food Barn?
Farmer's Food Barn.
Farmers, yeah.
Okay, I think Taylor, you got it first. What made it so obvious that Farmer's Food Barn was the fake one?
It's not. There's no Farmer's Food Barn. I just know it's not. I know that the first one existed. I don't know. Honestly, I feel like I know a weird amount of grocery stores now, and I'm like aware of some of the marketing and like the weird names out there. So I just feel like, I don't know, it's just a gut thing. It's a super talent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's the last one. Which one of these is not real? Is it Winn-Dixie, Winston's Wonder Market?
Winston's.
Yeah.
3 for 3.
All right, Taylor, you got it. Let me add up your points here.
She has a lot.
I just want to say I got all 3, and then I got so I feel like I got the point for that one, and then I got the first question. So I've got 2 points.
All right. Yeah, Winston's Wonder Market is fake. But going back for a second, Farmer's Food Barn, I made up these names and then I Googled them just to make sure they weren't real. Farmer's Food Barn, there is a Farmer Fred's food barn in Australia, but it's just a single location, so I didn't think it counted.
Yeah, I feel like that was fair. Also, I love the idea that you made them up, but like, let me make sure it doesn't exist, because it could. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that says a lot about grocery chains.
Yeah, there was one, and I forget what it was called, that I made up, and then I was like, oh no, wait, that is a chain. I was probably just remembering it and forgot about it. Wow. All right, so after 2 questions and a 3-part speed round, the points are Ebere 1, Taylor 4. Taylor, you are our winner. Congratulations on coming away with the crown from another retail challenge.
I will say, to Ebere's credit, I got real aggressive on the shouting on the last one. I feel like we were both there, so I just want to say, good.
That was the game, Taylor. You beat me.
Yeah. Ebere doesn't hate the player; he hates the game. Wait, isn't that how the saying goes?
Yeah, don't hate the player, hate the game. Right?
Yeah. All right. Well, hey. Coming up on the Where We Buy podcast, we got a bunch of great episodes, including a thing on new restaurants in South Florida, technology in malls, and retail capital markets, retail investment, grocery anchored centers, specifically in the Southeast. So those are all episodes that are coming up. Just search for Where We Buy in whatever podcast app you choose to use. Or you can find us on the web at wherewebuy.show.
Absolutely. You can also find us on YouTube, where you should be sure to hit the subscribe button and also click on the little bell icon so that you're notified every time we drop a new show each week.
Or you can follow the JLL retail page on LinkedIn. Don't worry, folks. We'll be back next week. New episode next Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. You can find that on everythingweknow.show or on the JLL Retail LinkedIn page.
So, Taylor, you love Sprouts, right? So how many different types of quinoa do they sell at Sprouts? Can you tell me?
Ebere, it's, Southern California. There are a lot. I will tell you all of those and more next week.